why do you think society is so or was so scared of talking about aging? Because people have approached other hard problems, but aging was like the scare. People, no one wanted to talk about it until you and some others did. So why was that?
Well, right. Of course, society really is still petrified of talking rationally about aging. Um, uh, I think it's pretty straightforward, actually. I don't think it's particularly surprising. Because essentially, aging is this terrible thing that we've known about since the dawn of civilization, and that we've known it's terrible, and that we don't know how to do anything about it. And people have been coming along saying they do know how to do something about it, ever since the beginning of civilization, and they've always been wrong. So what do? Either you spend your life being preoccupied by this terrible thing that's going to happen to you in, for most of us, the rather distant future, or you find some way to put it out of your mind and get on with your miserably short life and make the best of it, right? And the thing is, if you've decided that that's what you're going to do, to
So
rationalize,
it's so bad you'd rather ignore it.
that's right.
Yeah.
Then you've got to just figure out how to ignore it, right? And so you've got to rationalize it away. And it doesn't matter how irrational your rationalization is, just as long as it works. So people will make up the most infantile fairy stories about aging being some kind of blessing in disguise, like doesn't death give meaning to life, or well, all the people, things like that. And then they will immediately switch off their brains before noticing that they've just spoken complete bollocks. It's like, that's what I've been cooking with all this time. I came up with the phrase the pro-aging trance to discuss to denote this. I did that because when I started coming across this, the only thing in my past that it reminded me of was a stage hypnotist show that I had gone to in my first year at Cambridge. Have you ever been to a stage hypnotist show?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yes? All right.
Yes,
Well,
I've seen them on TV. Yeah.
All right. So there was a particular thing in the show that had stuck in my mind, which was the stage hypnotists. Know how it works. They they have a big audience. They have a system for getting some of those people into a light trance. They'll bring one or two people up on stage and get them into a very deep trance, and then they'll continue. All right. So they did that, and there's this one guy. The hypnotist did a logic thing. He said, "Okay, first of all, he said, okay, this is actually your right elbow and this is your left elbow." He switched the guy's elbows in his mind, right? And he drilled that into the guy to enforce that this really was the way around it was. And then he said, all right, I would like you to touch your right elbow with your left forefinger, right? And of course, there's lots of, reeling and writhing. And so that's funny already, but it's not the coup de grace. It's not the main theme. So that happened. But then the hypnotist says, all right, you can stop now. And the guy stopped. And then the hypnotist says, you couldn't do it, could you? And the guy says, no. And then the hypnotist says, why not? And the most amazing thing is that the subject will then give a completely lucid, grammatically correct, unhesitating answer that will have a logical hole in it the size of, Canada. And he won't notice that this is the case. And this is Cambridge, right? This is a guy with a high IQ. He's got his friends in the audience also with a high IQ rolling in the aisles. He doesn't care, right? And so this really stuck in my mind. And very much was brought back to my mind when I started discovering the crazy irrationality that people have when they talk about aging, even people who are perfectly sensible about everything else.
That is so fascinating. It's true. And one of the things that drives me crazy sometimes is that when people say, if there was a pill that would make me live forever, or if there was an option to live forever, I would not take it. I want to die at whatever. And but then like they forget to ask the kind of the recursive question, or like, is there any day where you choose to die, right? And that when you ask them that question, universally the answer is no.
I've tried the recursive or perhaps iterative approach to this before, and it never worked. So about 15 years ago, I came up with a more humorous answer that kind of cuts through the lack of mathematical sophistication.
Yeah.
Someone said to me on stage, they said, how long do you want to live? And I rolled my eyes because I heard the question 1,000 times before, of course. And I said, right, I've got a question for you. The question is, what time do you want to go to the toilet next Sunday? right? And everyone in the audience is like confused and doesn't understand what the hell I'm talking about. And I said, look, that's a stupid question, right? You all know it's a stupid question. But the thing is, you also all know why it's a stupid question. Namely, you're going to have better information on the topic nearer the time, and you're going to be able to act on that better information. So I don't have the faintest idea whether I want to live to 100, but I do know that I want to be able to decide when I'm 99 rather than having the choice removed from me by my declining health. Yeah, so that has worked a little bit better than the iterative approach.
What one follow up here, because one of the things we like to do is speak with contrarian thinkers like yourself that are just, and often they're just principled rationalists. Why is this an important problem, right? Or another way, you wanted to change the world, and so therefore aging is one of the, I would assume in your view, one of the best ways to do that. Why is that a good thing?
Right. Well, I mean, of course, perhaps a slightly more accurate thing than to change the world is to improve the world. So what does that mean? So as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
I guess I'm fundamentally a utilitarian. So that basically means, reducing suffering, increasing happiness. And it's completely unarguable that aging causes far, far more suffering than anything else in the world today. So, QED.
All right. Great. We're there. Thank you for that clear explanation. So, one question we had is that you coined this term, longevity escape velocity, and maybe you can just explain that history and what it means. And by the way, I love that because I started a company called Velocity after that phrase, escape velocity. So I'm
All right.
love that phrase. So yeah, tell us about that.
So the concept arose, and I coined the term, and I'm going to say something like 2004. The concept arose as a result of the big eureka moment that I had in 2000 about how we should actually go about aging, fixing aging. Namely, that we should do it by preventative maintenance, aka damage repair, rather than by slowing down the rate at which damage is generated in the body. So everyone was comfortable, though they didn't really use this terminology, with the idea that aging is a process of the accumulation of self-inflicted damage that eventually exceeds what the body is set up to tolerate, and therefore you get sick and you die. Everyone kind of accepted that. But the assumption was that slowing aging down would be much easier than repairing aging. And I realized that just wasn't the case. A large part of why I realized it was that I had chosen my own path in terms of what areas of biology to explore in the literature. And I'd gone way beyond what nearly every person who called themselves a gerontologist actually knew about. So I was able to put a lot of bits together. Because, of course, damage repair is by definition almost a divide and conquer approach, a multi-pronged approach. All right, then. So then I realized that if you take someone who's already in middle age and you slow their aging down, you don't even benefit them very much because they've already got most of the damage that they need to get sick. So that's one advantage of being able to repair damage. But the other thing is that you buy time. That if you take someone who's already 60 and you fix them up a bit with, let's say, an incomplete but somewhat comprehensive panel of repair interventions, then you will get them back to being biologically 40 in terms of the amount of damage that their body contains. And then, the body will accumulate damage. Of course, the damage that they get over the next 20 years will be enriched in the difficult damage that the repair panel doesn't work on, because you can use that repair panel as often as you like. So basically, you've only got the difficult damage. However, that means that if you carry on using the same interventions after someone gets back to being biologically 60, they won't work because it's the wrong kind of damage. But scientists like me will have had 20 years in which to improve the treatments so that they're more comprehensive and so that we can repair some of the difficult damage, shift it into the easy category, and you end up being able to rejuvenate the same people. And of course, the idea is that you carry on being able to do that. And so my definition of longevity escape velocity was simply, it's the minimum rate at which scientists need to improve the treatments in order to stay one step ahead of the problem. Now, it really only kicks in once you've got about 20 years of postponement of aging in the first place, because if you've only got, say, 2 years, then you won't be able to get enough improvements to get the next 2 years. And it's for that reason that I've always said that longevity escape velocity is actually never going to be achieved in mice, and it's touch and go whether we'll ever do it in cats or dogs, because you just don't have time, right? But humans, it's relatively easy. Someone else actually, so a few years later, coined the term the Methuselarity, which is the point at which we reach longevity escape velocity. And it makes sense to have such a term, because once we get there is no way in hell that we'll ever fall back below longevity escape velocity.
Right.
If you think about it, longevity escape velocity actually slows down as time goes on, because the remaining damage that you still can't fix, it takes longer to accumulate to a problematic level.